Hey everybody, Nick Kyper's back for another edition here, Tuesday, July 21st, and you're watching and listening to the Real Kyper at Noon show. Sorry, no Doug McLean today. I ruled him unfit. Of course, we know he's on that PTO. I got to bring him along slowly here. He's not a professional broadcaster. He's not used to the day-to-day ins and outs of broadcasting, but I assure you, he'll be back soon. Today, we focus on the return to play. My special guest had a 21-year career in the National Hockey League. It was capped, of course, with a 1993 Stanley Cup with the Montreal Canadiens. I'm speaking of Mathieu Schneider, who is currently an executive with the National Hockey League Players Association. His fingerprints are all over the return to play. His fingerprints are all over a new extension with the CBA and the National Hockey League. Gary Bettman and his owners are happy. He's happy. I'm hoping you're happy. But sit back and listen, and we got a couple of good nuggets, including what the Olympics means to the players and how the players benefited a lot better and a lot more this time around. Sit back and enjoy Mathieu Schneider. All right, my next guest is a 21-year veteran in the National Hockey League, a guy that has played the game hard on the ice and now off equally as an executive with the National Hockey League. I'm talking about Mathieu Schneider. Now, Schneids, at one time, we were teammates way back then with the Toronto Maple Leafs. I'd like to say that it feels like yesterday, but I'm not sure yesterday feels like yesterday anymore.
You know, there's some days, like you said, it feels like yesterday. There's other days it's a lifetime ago. But no, we didn't have a very good team there, Kyper, did we? But we had some fun. We found a way to have some fun every once in a while.
Well, more importantly, and we are speaking to Mathieu Schneider, executive with the National Hockey League Players Association. We did find post-careers, I think, which is equally important to today's athlete, starting a secondary life. Mine as a broadcaster, yours now, almost 10 years with the National Hockey League Players Association.
Yeah, it's been pretty wild. I've have a lot of great experiences here. Obviously, coming to work for Don Fear, who shifted over to from baseball when he was actually planning his retirement 10 years ago as well. But no, it's been tremendous, and I just trying to make the game better any way that we can.
Oh man, and that's what we're all trying to do or look forward to as a fan. I don't even know where to start in terms of a conversation with you, who's obviously been an integral part of putting back together the return to play. Let's even go back to March. Prior to the NBA first making the announcement that they were going to shut down, did you guys, as a players association, have any inkling or feel that this is where it could get?
No, I would say not at all. I mean, other than, fairly early on, we started talking about bubble cities and what that might look like, talking about 2 cities, 1 city. And it was just at the time, I mean, looking back, talk about time standing still. We've been here 4 months, and it's just, it has been crazy. Everything has been extremely unpredictable, and we're, each step of the way, it was just kind of fingers crossed that we'd be able to have some sort of hockey this year. And, I think it's amazing that we've gotten to this point, where we're getting ready to head into the 2 hub cities. And I'm getting pretty excited now, actually. I've just been holding my breath for the whole time, it feels like. But I'm starting to get pretty excited, and I think, fans are going to be in for a real treat over the next couple months here.
And I want to get in all of that, but I want to take the listener and the viewer back in terms of the process and where we were and how we got to as early as today. Now,
yeah.
Does the league now make the announcement, shut it down? Do they give you guys a heads up first? And then, and in that point, in the second week of March, you guys just sit back and wait, or are you involved in all of the dialogue with Gary Bettman, with the league, in terms of how you move forward from a day-to-day situation?
Yeah, I would say Don and Gary talked pretty well every day. Probably in the lighter times, maybe every other day, and then some of the heavier times in bargaining, we're probably talking 3, 4, 5 times a day. But early in the process, Gary was great as far as looping us in and making us a part of the process. Obviously, I think he realized very early on, and that the players needed to be involved and engaged if we were going to have any kind of success coming back. That the guys would need to be a part of the process, and that's what happened early on when we first started with what the scenario might look like. The league came in with 31 team scenario. They wanted to finish some sort of the regular season, maybe not the 10 or 11 games teams have left, but maybe get everyone to 75, 76 games. We had a lot of conversations around that. The guys on our committee, Connor McDavid, Johnny Tavares, Ron Hainsey, Mark Scheifele, and I'm leaving one out. We've had so many different committees over this time, but we had a lot of player involvement, and the guys wanted to start with the round of 16 right out of the gate. Then it quickly became apparent that there were too many teams that were right there on the cusp. It wouldn't be fair to cut them out, and trying to come up with a number that made sense. And we ended up with 24 team scenario, which we felt like we could complete in a reasonable amount of time, knowing that guys are going to be away from their families for a significant amount of time. But I'd say every step of the way was collaborative. They listened to us, we listened to them, and then we had to go back to our constituencies and get buy-in. Even though we had a 5-player committee, we had to go back to our executive board, and we went back to our membership to make sure that everybody was comfortable with what we were doing and why we were doing it, more importantly.
Well, I think everybody's excited, if not at least curious, how this thing all plays out. As far as the information, and you had just mentioned Gary Bettman keeping you guys in the loop. Was there a scenario, and it's my understanding that Gary Bettman would also talk to Major League Baseball, would talk to the NBA, the NFL. It just seemed like everybody was kind of leaning towards each other's information. Were you privileged to any of that as a Players Association? Did you talk to MLB's Players Association or the NBA's? Were you in contact with them as well?
Yeah, we were in close contact with the other unions. Football obviously probably had, they weren't dealing with a tremendous amount up until more recently. Basketball was in the closest situation to us, and we had a lot of conversations with people at NBPA. And Don, obviously, his ties to baseball. We've always had a close relationship with the people at baseball. So dealing with a lot of similar issues, but basketball was certainly the one that was closest to what we were dealing with, and on many different levels. So it was certainly helpful, no question about it, very helpful. And I think, I said from the very beginning that, we were probably all going to be able to play, or we were all going to be shut down at some point. But again, no more closer than basketball, the parallels and the amount of time that we played, that we had during the regular season, kind of, what we were looking at to potentially finish the season, and how we might do that successfully. I think probably the major difference between us and basketball is we were in the middle of a CBA negotiation, And I think that actually helped us, the fact that we had been having conversations over the last year and a half, 2 years with the league. And we were in a pretty good position with the CBA. It allowed us to deal with mainly the pandemic key issues in the return to play. But we're a long way down the road with our CBA negotiations leading into this.
Wow, you said you guys were in a pretty good situation. Does that mean that you felt like you had to strike at this opportunity for an extension? Did it mean that you guys had what many might interpret as more leverage than ever before? Is that what you mean in terms of a good opportunity here to get a deal done?
I think it's difficult to explain, but I would just try to simply put it this way. All of our discussions up until the pandemic were, I think, very healthy, probably different than any other time. And since I've been involved as a player, as an executive, there were very open, honest discussions for a 2-year period. We had come to a lot of agreements on a lot of different issues. And we were down to probably a handful of key issues that were important ones that we had to tackle if we were going to get a CBA extension. And then once the pandemic hit, it was just, I would say it was probably a natural time frame that we were looking at. Everything kind of just folded into one big overarching agreement. I'd say, Gary made no secret about this over the last couple of years, that the main reason that he wanted to have an extension in place was to go negotiate the new US TV deal, the new streaming rights deals that are coming up this next year. So I don't think that changed at all. There was certainly some pressure and some real deadlines with June 30th and the NHL draft and other triggers that were in the CBA. All the NHL contracts expired on June 30th. So there were a lot of things that came into focus as we got closer to that June 30th deadline. And as you know, in CBA negotiations, deadlines are crucial. So I would say that's probably what, pushed us into this time frame that we were dealing with. And I think it really helped to us coming to agreements on a lot of different issues.
Matthew, there's a saying that says you can't please everyone. And there are some that feel like maybe the Players Association didn't push hard enough, that to get the best deal possible, you got to take it to the edge of the cliff, but not push it over. To those that say that or suggest that, what do you say to them?
Well, I think there are a lot of people that, one, really don't understand the ins and outs of collective bargaining. It's not like negotiating an individual player contract or anything like that. It is much, much different. I think anyone you've ever heard talk from Players Association standpoint or from the league standpoint going through these things, nothing's agreed to until everything's agreed to, and that's 100% true. You have a hard time understanding what that means unless you've gone through collective bargaining. That's first thing. Second thing is, I think there are some people that thought that maybe we could get rid of the cap or soften the cap, have exceptions to the cap. I would just say that we've had 3 lockouts and 1 strike over the course of my career that ended up in the agreement that we've had. There were big fights. Billions of dollars were lost in those fights going back to 2012 and 2004 in particular. Money was lost on both sides. And to think that because we were in a pandemic when no one's making any money from not only their hockey business, but from their regular businesses, and the entire world is suffering that somehow we were going to be able to change the system in any kind of meaningful way is, I think it's living in a bit of a fantasy land. And again, I think you look at the team that we have at the PA. With Don Fear and his experience over 40 years now and labor relations. I think it's pretty hard to say that there's anyone that could have done a better job than Don Fear going through this, or that would have had the experience that a person like Don has through any of these.
So the Gary Bettman and the owners made it crystal clear, talking or trying to negotiate down the escrow is a non-starter.
Well, I mean, it's. I think the fact that we were able to get a cap on escrow, to have the certainty for the players for the next several years is really a huge part of the agreement that I think our guys are most happy about. And, that's something that really has been elusive for the past couple of negotiations. I know we've talked about it, and it was something that the league was never willing to entertain, that we were able to achieve in this agreement. So, there's so many different components to escrow, what causes escrow and what goes into it. I think there's a gross misunderstanding by a lot of people on how escrow has gotten to where it is, and the history is so important. And really understanding it, I think we can address it around the edges, but in the end, the system that we're in is a 50-50 revenue split, and nothing changes that. So if that is going to be changed one day, if players decide that they want to change it, I think it's fairly well known amongst our guys that that's going to take a big fight. And I think for the most part, our guys understood that this isn't the time to pick a big fight. This is a time to really try to get our sport on track. The next couple years, the uncertainty that's going to be out there for the next couple years, I think really was underlying every single thing that we negotiated throughout this pandemic. And, I think we and the league, hockey in general, is set up for success really over the next 5 or 6 years. And I, from my perspective anyway, there's a lot of excitement.
Okay, so you mentioned the certainty beyond what we hope, Matthew, is the crowning of a Stanley Cup champion in the year 2020. But I would believe that you guys have plans beyond getting out of this and starting next season in terms of what it could look like with or without fans. Does the new CBA guarantee the players that if we start 2021 without fans, that Gary won't cancel the season and we play it out much like we're trying to play out awarding a Stanley Cup this season? Well,
I mean, there are going to be a tremendous amount of challenges. I think, you look what happened with the Blue Jays just the last few days, and the government shutting that down. What it would look like actually, playing games safely when we get to November, December, if we'll be able to play in our home arenas, or we have to create bubble cities, things like that. There's a tremendous amount that still needs to be discussed and worked through, and we're not going to have answers to those things in the short haul here. I think our focus is really on, like you just said, finishing this, tournament and awarding the Stanley Cup. and then we're going to have another group of hurdles that we're going to have to overcome. But I think, those type of things are already being thought about. There's no question about it. A lot will be dependent upon a vaccine, but when we're going through all the economics over the next 2 or 3 years, our worst case scenario has us playing an 82 game schedule in front of no fans, and we're sitting here this time next year and there's still no fans in the building. That was our worst case scenario as far as revenues are concerned, and we modeled off of that. So there's that scenario, and then there's the best case scenario where revenues bounce back to where they might have been this year had we finished the entire season. There's a vaccine in December, January, and we get people back in the buildings quickly. And then there's everything in between.
Sorry, Matthew, that's $4 billion that you 3.8 to $4 billion is the target here to get back.
4.8 billion, actually. 4.8 billion was the projected revenue for this season.
Wow. Now, you made an interesting point in terms of Major League Baseball, the Toronto Blue Jays. How dumb were they to sit there and make all these plans without getting the stamp of approval from the Canadian government? My understanding between Gary Bettman's office and your office that you guys were in constant contact with the respective governments. My understanding was Gary, his job was to deal with President Trump, and Donald and yourself with Prime Minister Justin Trudeau. Is that a fairly accurate statement?
No, Gary was and his office, where they were in contact with both governments. Don Zavalo, our general counsel, was on a lot of the calls with Prime Minister Trudeau's office. For us, the plan, the protocols were the most important thing, and we deal a lot more with the Canadian government as the NHL than baseball or basketball, the other sports do. So I think it probably caught them by surprise a little bit. I was on calls with the health authorities in Alberta and British Columbia and Ontario. I know they were all very impressed with the protocols that we had taken. I think the single most important thing was the testing. That players are being tested every day. They felt a very high comfort level with that. But the second most important thing, I believe, is the fact that it was a bubble and no one's coming in or out. So, if you just imagine, your house and, you're there with your family and you're safe and no one's coming in, no one's going out. You feel pretty safe that you're not getting the virus introduced, and vice versa. People on the outside, if you had the virus, people on the outside are not in danger of contracting it from you. So, essentially what we're doing is we're creating that giant household. Everybody that comes in is going to be have tested for a period of time, negative, and when they get in the bubble, they're going to be negative, going to continue to be tested every single day. As soon as symptoms might pop up in a player, then he's isolated, and that's the way we'll be able to contain it. But the general public is not at risk, and I think there has been some misconception about what the bubble actually looks like. But I joked at a previous interview that it's going to be like Mars. Nobody's ever been there. They don't know what it's going to be like, and that's the truth. We're going to have to make some changes on the fly, I think, and see, as we go along here. But I think being in the bubble is actually going to be the safest part of this whole process for us and playing out. Theoretically, the virus should never be introduced because everybody coming in is tested negative.
There's a few of our teammates that would accuse us of visiting Mars on a couple of occasions. You know that, right?
I think there's a lot more than a few for me, Kyper.
Now, you mentioned the bubble here. So players are at a hotel. They leave their room. Are they exiting the building in a separate hallway that normal people in the hotel wouldn't use? Like, are they walking in the lobby? Are they
No,
going out the
we
front
have
door?
the entire hotels. So the hotels that we're in, we have them.
And no one else is
specific.
allowed in them.
No one's in the hotels. Uh, any workers that would be in close contact with the players are going to be tested every day as well. Symptom checks, everything that you see. I guess I'm not sure how it is in Toronto right now, but out here in LA, you walk into a store and you get a temperature check, and you're wearing a mask, the social distancing, everything that goes along with that. So all those protocols will be in place within the bubble. Guys will have access to the outside. So Edmonton, there's going to be a big fence around the entire arena complex. No one will be allowed in or out. Guys are going to have outdoor spaces. They're going to have indoor spaces. I think in Edmonton, they're going to be each team's going to have their own lounge set up, if you will, with TVs and ping pong tables, refrigerator, kind of like a giant living room, so to speak. And the same thing is going to be happening in Toronto. 2 different hotels in Toronto. It's a little different in Toronto. You're not going to have a big fence like one big campus, but we're just going to have 2 hotels, and there's going to be outdoor space available. I think BMO Field is going to be available to the guys. They're talking about having food trucks available. Guys will have access to Uber Eats and Skip the Dishes, things like that. Each team will have a concierge that if they need groceries or things of that nature, they'll be able to get. The hotels are going to do all the laundry. I don't know if I'm covering everything off. There will be gyms for the guys to work out in while they're there, things of that nature.
Would you be responsible now for certain chefs in the hotel or housekeeping to be tested daily as well? Is that your responsibility, or do you assume that they're COVID negative?
No, that's going to be, they'll be tested by every morning. Players will get up. I think, don't quote me on this, but I believe there will be roughly eight stations that'll be testing. The players will go through it, and they'll have like a half-hour time slot that they have to get tested each morning for their team. And I'm not exactly sure how the testing will go for the workers, but I'm pretty sure that they'll be on a fairly strict regimen. In all fairness, I don't think that there's going to be an awful lot of interaction between the staff and our players. It's going to be social distancing, but I don't think there'll be a daily maid service and things like that. It's not going to be like your normal hotel experience that you might be used to. I think there are going to be a lot of changes to that.
So you mentioned you're going to feel a lot better once you get your players into their respective hubs, but we still got a week to go, and we know players are testing positive. Now, what is the proper protocol now when someone tests positive? What happens to them? How long are they out? How many tests do they need to be negative? Is it a standard 14-day quarantine? Is it shorter? How does it work?
There's an awful lot that goes into it, and then there's a difference between symptomatic players and asymptomatic players. I think a lot of our guys have been asymptomatic that have tested positive. So they immediately get a test the next day to confirm whether it's a positive or a negative. We have had several false positives over the course of phase 2 and phase 3 here. But if someone's coming in with a positive test, then like I said, they're immediately isolated. They're given a second test. If they're negative, they can go back into the mix. I'm not sure the exact number of tests that they have to complete. The protocols are all, I think, phase 3 and phase 4, I think they're close to 100 pages or more, all the detail that goes into it. But players that actually do test positive after a certain amount of time, they can continue to test positive for months. Is not uncommon with this, and be free of the virus, have developed the antibodies. So I believe
Is there a chance you could play that way?
Yes, there is.
So you're saying there could be a scenario where it's a player,
right? They're not contagious.
Positive.
They can't spread the virus, but they can still test positive for a fairly long period of time. And once they've recovered and they're symptom free, and they're after, I can't remember the exact number of days, but it's a period of time that they would be able to come back into the mix.
Wow, that's interesting.
Yeah.
That's interesting. Mathieu, has it been discussed if in fact a team has quite a few players tested, that a team could actually be disqualified and the tournament continue?
You know what? We haven't had the specific discussions around that. We've assumed that there's that possibility. There's no question about it. And I think, we plan on having, the doctors close by and available throughout this process. And, if a scenario like that pops up, we're going to have to address it in real time with the doctors and their advice. And that's, that's really the wild card here, right? What happens if one team or a couple teams has contracted the virus and it spreads throughout the team quickly? What does that look like? I think, obviously, again, heading into it, everyone that's going to be in the bubble will be negative, will have tested negative for a period of time, and will continue to test negative when they're in there. So, we're cautiously optimistic that we're going to be able to get through it without having a widespread outbreak, but it's just something that we're going to have to watch and monitor throughout this whole process, and we'll be thinking about it right up until the end, I'm sure.
One thing I do want to get back to, I'm sorry, I'm kind of jumping all over the place here, but the Olympics and that part of the CBA, we know how Connor McDavid feels about it, no question. But, I kind of watched the league's take on it, that whether or not it had value or not, and all the main reasons why Gary Bettman in the last year and a half, 2 years, has talked about not seeing much value in it from an owner's perspective. And then poof, it's back. It's like, do you feel like you got played a little bit, that you were negotiating against yourself on the Olympics? Well,
a couple things here. One, I mean, we were always skeptical about how the league and some of the owners viewed the Olympics, that it wasn't necessarily valuable to them the way they had felt. I would say that the one big change that will be coming with the Olympics is the IOC came to us and said that they'd be willing to allow the league and us as the PA to market the fact that our players are going to be over there.
Wow, that's a big deal.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And
that's huge.
I absolutely understand that side of it from Gary's perspective and the league perspective. I didn't agree with it, but I understood that, not being able to advertise or promote the fact that our guys, all of our NHL players are, playing in this tournament, risking injury, everything that goes along with it, the disruption to the season in the middle of the year, which I is it a valid argument? I never really got there. I played in 2 Olympics as a player. We didn't do very well in those 2 Olympics, but it's a great experience. And I think if you really look now at the stars in our league, they've all grown up watching, our best players play in the Olympics every year, and that's something that they aspire to do. And I think it's just going to be tremendous for hockey fans throughout the world to be able to see our guys back at the Olympics again. And then, in conjunction with that, we want to grow the World Cup property as well. I think we missed some opportunities here to get back with a second World Cup following up on 2016. Thought it was a tremendous tournament, but we're looking to get back in the World Cup as well and bring that property back.
Wow. Big news on Real Kyper at Noon and the players being allowed to market themselves during the Olympics. Now, would you guys have access to the rings, or is that asking a little bit too much?
Well, we're still negotiating, or it will be an ongoing process. I would say, this was a meeting that we had. I want to say it was just in the new year. It was either just in the new year or just before the holidays last year. It's all become a blur. But Bob Nicholson came in with Hockey Canada, USA Hockey was there, the IOC was present, IHF, Renee Fassel. And so, I think, they're dealing with things on their side as well. They've been well documented over the years, but I think there was probably some disappointment in NHL players not being present in Korea. So, as much as it was disappointing for us and for our fans, I think it was disappointing for the IOC and the Korean Federation that bid and paid for the Winter Olympics. Obviously, going to China, that's there's an awful lot going on there now in the political spectrum. But we've been traveling to China the last couple of years to try to grow the game there. There's a big appetite for hockey there now. And then we're looking forward to Italy in 26. That's something that I think is very exciting too. So,
wow.
It's just, I think, we're teed up when we talk about the future of the game. And, if we can get out of this pandemic standing on 2 feet and look forward, I think there's some really, bright spots that we have to look forward. Our guys have to look forward to over the next 5 or 6 years.
Fingers crossed. Any other nuggets with the Olympics in terms of what you were able to get that you couldn't get before?
The economics are in place, similar to what we've had in the past. I think, all those things. I think what I would say is there are a lot of barriers that were removed initially, and we'll have ongoing discussions
More
with
access,
the IOC.
more access.
Yeah. So, but it's it's all positive. It's all positive. I think it's great. It bodes well for hockey.
Well, you mentioned the Winter Games in 2026. When are you guys going to fit in a World Cup?
So in between, the idea has been and always was to have every second year we play the Olympics and then play the World Cup, Olympics, World Cup, and have a schedule along those lines.
So right now we are looking at a World Cup in 2024.
That's the goal. Yes, it is.
It's a lot of international hockey for our fans out there.
Well, I think, I mean, it's exciting. I think it's, the best players in the world, best on best. The fans love it. It's when you look at what soccer's been able to create with their World Cup, how it's grown the game internationally. That's the reason behind it, to have that international presence, to continue to grow the game internationally, is the main reason, the main goal for playing those big international competitions. Of course, it does that for North America as well, but I think we take a lot of pride in the fact that we have so many countries represented in our membership, think we're well over 30 countries that have players in the NHL today, and that's that's extremely important for us.
You are listening to Mathieu Schneider, top executive with the National Hockey League Players Association, sharing a lot of great details here on the Real Kyper at Noon show. Mathieu, I opened up by talking about your 21-year career. I want you to go back 20 years, let's say, a nice round number, and tell me how a young Mathieu Schneider gets himself motivated now to go try to win a Stanley Cup, which you did in 1993 with the Montreal Canadiens, in an empty building.
Yeah. No, it's going to be interesting. It's going to be interesting. Although I played on an Islanders team back in 1995. We played.
So, good. Oh, I played in Hartford in 1992, 93. So I can tell you.
Yeah. It's not easy to get motivated. I understand. Well, it's going to be interesting. I know the league is working hard to bring in a lot of different, fan noises, sound, music, all the things that go along with your traditional NHL game. But, we're jumping into some pretty intense hockey right out of the gate here. And, as a player, I mean, for the most part, as loud as the crowd is, you realize, you don't know the crowd's there. You're so focused on the ice. But it's I really can't imagine that. It's funny, we have a woman that's been staying with us here. She's a professional volleyball player, and the AVP is back playing this week here in California. They have a tournament this weekend. Melissa Humana Paradis, she's her and her partner have been number 1, 2, I think, in the world the last couple of years. Canadian, by the way, she's from Toronto, and she just played her first matches this weekend, and they played in front of no fans. It was on NBC and Amazon Prime. I thought the announcers did a tremendous job from a fan perspective watching the game. I think the announcers need to kind of carry a little bit more weight, I think, so to speak, or, try to create that excitement that might be lacking on the court or on the ice. It's going to be challenging, there's no question, but I know we've had the opportunity to learn from some of the other leagues because we're not the first back, and I think we're going to benefit from that. I know I'm not 100% in the loop on everything that's going to go on, but I think there are a lot of exciting, creative ideas for the fans. And, as a player, though, it'll be challenging every step of the way from, missing the last 4 months to coming back and competing now is going to be challenging for our guys. But, that's what they do. That's why they're the best at what they do, and that's why we love watching them. So it's going to be, I think by the time we get into this, it's going to be some real exciting hockey.
It's interesting. You mentioned the volleyball on the weekend on NBC, and I did watch it. And once the focus is actually on the match, you'd be surprised how seldom the stands were in the shot. And I know it's by design in many ways, but once you start focusing on the competition, there is a tendency kind of to forget that there's no one in the stands unless the shot is on your screen. But yeah. I think that might be the same case with the game. Once it's in and they get their tight shots and they get their wide shots of the rink, possibly other than the first few rows, and if there is some crowd noise in it, I think the focus will be actually on the level of competition.
No question. No question from a fan perspective. my wife Shannon keeps coming up with great ideas. I keep passing them along. I keep passing them along to the NHL. She's like, "Why don't you guys do this?" Or why don't, I know a lot of players have ideas, but it's I think there are just so many people that are thinking about these things and have been thinking about these things for a long time. But
any surprises that we haven't thought about that you can share exclusively right here on my show that we can
I wish I had them. Maybe when I'm in the bubble, I can shoot you a couple. But I'm going to Mars on Saturday. So
you're leaving for the weekend here. You'll be tested every day as well, I assume. Anybody that's in that bubble has the same requirements, right?
Yeah, testing now. I tested on the weekend. I'm tested today, and I'll have one more test before I leave to head to Edmonton, and then once I'm in, test every single day.
Wow. Now, can we just get there with minimal noise? That's the key here.
I think now that the camps have started, I think things have quieted down an awful lot. I think a lot of times what I really witnessed throughout, and it's not just hockey sports writers, but kind of there's a tremendous amount of negativity. It's easy to get caught up in it, and sometimes it's hard to stay optimistic. When you're trying to do something that's everybody's trying to poke holes in. But now that the guys are back in their cities and they're on the ice and they're focused and they're part of I guess a little bit of normalcy back in their lives, I think it's very healthy for the guys to be back and competing here. Even the group of teams that are going to be knocked out in the first play-in round, I think just to have this opportunity now, because we talked about it earlier, the uncertainty for next year, when we can come back, how we come back, those type of things. There just is an uncertainty around the future, and I think our guys are going to really look at this and appreciate the opportunity to be able to come back and compete at such a high level, even if it is for a shorter period of time. But the guys that are going to be competing as the tournament goes on, you'll see them get more and more dialed in, and I think there's going to be some exciting hockey early because it might. Mistakes being made that we might not normally see. Can easily see some higher scoring games throughout this tournament.
I know so much of the focus the last little while has been the return to play, which is the majority of your membership. But you guys cannot forget that there's 7 teams that aren't playing, and they're all members of your association. Do you worry about them sitting out as long as 6, 7, 8 months, or probably maybe as long as 10 months?
Yeah, no, we've been talking to the guys, myself and the other former players on staff had a call with the leaders on those 7 teams last week, and we'll continue to talk to those guys. There's an awful lot of challenges. But listen, you've gone through years, I know, like I did, where you've had major injuries and you miss a significant amount of time. You miss 6 or 8 months. You do what you have to do, and I think probably the biggest challenge I think facing some guys is going to, be how do they get a high level of competition between now and next season, before their home opener. But the one thing our guys will be is in tremendous shape. That these guys today, it's not like we used to take our 2 or 3 months off in the summer before we got back and started training again. If you get an early elimination from the playoffs, you just had so much downtime. It's not going to be a lot different from that for those guys. And I think even if we were able to organize something, say in October, by the time they go back and go back to their home cities and train and come back, there's going to be so much time that passed. I'm not sure that there's value in that, even, if they're going to, play in a camp for 7 or 10 days or 2 weeks even. So we're really going to try to work with the players, work with some experts, trainers, doctors, try to figure out the best course of action for the guys that have not played meaningful hockey leading up until next season.
I want to talk a little bit about, and I mentioned this on the top of our get-together here, that you've joined the National Hockey League Players Association in 2011. And I've been watching you, Matthew. I watched you on your press conference going into Phase 3 with Gary Bettman, Bill Daly, Donald Fair, who's the executive director, and yourself. And you're quite comfortable. You're in the zone. And I'm sitting there going, if you haven't run away from this job in the last 4 months, I mean, you won't. And we know Donald's getting a little long in the tooth. Don't tell him I said that. But if there's a glass frame in the hallway of the NHL Players Association, and it says, "In case of emergency, break glass," do you come out and take over as executive director?
I don't have the answer for you on that one. In the end, that's up to our players. I would just say this. I think, I went through some really tremendous, prosperous times as a member of the NHL Players Association when I was younger. I've been through, a strike as a player, 2 lockouts as a player, and then as an executive now, two CBA negotiations, 1 lockout. My goal when I came here, it was, first of all, was really to learn, to roll up my sleeves and to learn. I was a player rep when I played for a number of years. I was on a lot of different committees, competition committee. We didn't have all the health and safety committees back in the day. But I was on the search committee that ultimately hired Don Fear with four other veteran players. Ryan Getzlaff was on. He was the youngest at the time and the only one still playing. But shortly after I came to the PA, I realized the importance to try to create the stability for years to come. And, you look back at 04, 05 through to 2010, roughly when Don came in, and there was just so much turmoil. And I was playing pretty much that entire time. And it's just not healthy. It's not healthy for anyone. It's not healthy for the game. And to have a strong, united membership and working with the league, particularly in the system that we're in, the revenue sharing system that we have, it's extremely important to have strong leadership and membership. And I think we've really been able to build a strong team. And there are some rock stars within our organization now, guys like Richard Smith and John Gerba, who a lot of people never have heard of, unlike Don Fear, myself, and Don Zavalo, our general counsel. But we just have some great people doing some great things for us. And, I'm very proud of the things that we've been able to do over the last 7 or 8 years. And I hope the players see that and value it. And I'm able to do it for several more. So, but, none of us have the crystal ball. We'll see how things go. And right now we're just taking it day to day.
No, second to second.
Yeah. No,
I mean, even minute to minute's not enough.
Yeah. You're right.
He is a special assistant to the executive director in the National Hockey League Players Association, Mathieu Schneider. Mathieu, thanks so much for your time. I want to wish you and your players, first of all, great health throughout this. I hope we all get out of it together. I hope we crown a Stanley Cup champion. and brighter days ahead. I can't thank you enough for your time today on the Real Kyper at Noon show. Thanks for joining us.
Anytime, Kyper, and congrats on your new show.
Thanks, pal. All right, big thanks again to Mathieu Schneider, who gave us some great details on things that we can look forward to. Please join us on our next episode of Real Kyper at Noon.